Matt Ryan's not that bad. He's not that bad. Matt Ryan's not the problem. But you and I both know that Matt Ryan probably doesn't eat green tea ice cream like Tom Brady does. His seasons are probably limited, so they've got to ultimately find somebody who's going to take over for him. What is up, everyone? It is Jake with Master Football, back at it again. Happy Friday. We're there. Anyways, happy Friday. Everyone, let's get after it. Please subscribe to the channel. I'd really appreciate that. Please hit the like button. Please share with your friends. All this is very much appreciated. If you could do that, I would very much appreciate it, okay? Trying to get this thing going, trying to get this thing started. But let's go ahead and get into the video. Okay, so it looks like our dear friend Mr. Julio Jones was traded. Now, I know this was a couple of days ago, but I wanted to go ahead and talk about that because there was a video that I had referenced earlier that I had made about Julio Jones, kind of what the Falcons want to do here and there. I had mentioned they could actually keep Julio and actually have a pretty vaunted offense going forward, but they decided to go with option B, which is, he wants out. We need cap space. Let's move on from him. We're not very good anyway, so let's try and move on and see what we can build. Let's go ahead and see what that trade resulted in, and then I want to go through a couple other items here to kind of see where they're at and what their rebuild kind of looks like. So here we are. We have a Field Yates, a tweet by Field Yates, and also retweeted and kind of commented on by a guy named John Glennon. So Julio Jones trade was made official today. Tennessee Titans trade a next year's second round pick, and a year after that's fourth round pick. And then the Atlanta Falcons are going to give away Julio Jones and 2023's sixth round pick. If you also check into this too, it also says that Tennessee will receive a fourth round pick in 2022 for the departure of Jonnu Smith through free agency. So they ultimately next year, they're going to be getting a second next year, they're going to be getting a fourth next year, and they're going to be getting a fourth the year after. And all they have to do is give up a sixth the year after in Julio Jones. So we come here, we look at this right here. This is the 2022 list of draft picks. So there's another 2 and another 4 in here, and then there's going to be another 4 in here as well. They will lose that 6 though that's down there. So they actually have a lot of picks. So that's what is that? They're going to have 6 picks in the first 4 rounds. That's a lot going forward. So the Falcons have decided to ultimately off Julio Jones. They are going to have a lot of picks coming up in the next couple of drafts. So let's check and see what the roster is looking at right now and see where they can kind of go from and what they can kind of build off of. So here's the stats for the Atlanta Falcons. So we saw here that the leading passer was obviously Matt Ryan, 4,500 yards. Todd Gurley is 670 yards rushing. Calvin Ridley, stud, 1,300 yards receiving. Foyesade Olukun is 117 tackles, and Bleedy Ray Wilson with 3 picks. So come down here and check this out. I want to check out the receivers because I know that ultimately they lost Julio Jones. Now you have to remember, this is minus Julio Jones and plus Kyle Pitts. They still have Russell Gage, who actually had a pretty solid season there. 16 starts, 700 yards, 4 touchdowns. They still have Hayden Hurst, who is a very good tight end, 500 yards, 6 touchdowns. So I think that they are going to be in a decent spot from a pass-catching perspective. Now, they have Mike Davis, who is going to be replacing Todd Gurley. Mike Davis comes over from the Panthers. When Christian McCaffrey went out last season, Mike Davis got into the game, and he had 600 yards, 6 touchdowns. He actually had a pretty good, solid outing in substitute duty for Christian McCaffrey. So we see here, this is what the roster is going to look like. Starting running back is Mike Davis. They gave him a 2-year deal at the beginning of the season. Then we have Matt Ryan, Calvin Ridley, Russell Gage. Tajay Sharp comes over. He is going to be the starting wide receiver, but I don't know if that's necessarily true. I think that could be up for grabs. Kyle Pitts is going to be the starting tight end, Hayden Hurst. Those two, I have a feeling that what they're going to do is they're almost going to do the same thing that the Tennessee Titans did. Arthur Smith comes over. The Tennessee Titans had Jonnu Smith and Anthony Firkser. Anthony Firkser was a little bit more of an inline tight end, but he could still run. Jonnu Smith was a little bit more of a move tight end. I think that they kind of fit that mold a little bit. So I think that this transition from the Titans to the Falcons, the offensive weaponry you don't take a huge step back, but you take somewhat of a step back. But still, I think that Arthur Smith has something that he can work with there. When you look at the roster and you check out kind of the direction of the team, I want to check out the last couple of drafts that they've had because you're able to kind of see that they actually done a decent job with drafting. Now, they haven't done as good as they could have. And remember the Falcons, I remember they had they lost an average of they had like 8 losses by an average of 3.5 points last season. It was just absolutely nuts. But let's go ahead and check out their past couple drafts and see how they've been doing and see where they're kind of looking for going forward into making their team a lot better. So we see here we have Kyle Pitts, Richie Grant from UCF. We have Jalen Mayfield, the offensive lineman from Michigan. That's how they've done for the first couple picks here. Coming down here, we have A.J. Terrell. I think he's the undisputed starter at corner there. Matt Hennessy, I believe, is going to be starting at center as well. Michael Walker right here actually played pretty well as an edge defender, kind of an edge defender linebacker, kind of a hybrid in between. Actually had a lot of good snaps according to Pro Football Focus's numbers. We come down here again, Chris Lindstrom, starting guard, Caleb McGarry, starting tackle, Kendall Sheffield, starting corner. They had a couple good guys there. The year before that, they had Calvin Ridley, who is a solid wide receiver. We have Russell Gage, who's the other starting wide receiver. We have Foyesade Olukun, who's going to be the starting, who's a safety. Now he's going to be a linebacker. They've been able to actually pull out a lot of good quality players in these last couple drafts. They need to do a couple things, though. They need to kind of set up an identity. I think that they're one of those teams that their offense is good, but I don't really know if their identity, are they a running team? Are they a throwing team? I mean, they had 4,500 passing yards last year, and Julio Jones was injured for a substantial portion of the season. So you just don't know, like, what are we getting into? What are we supposed to be? I do think that having Arthur Smith come over from the Titans, they're going to have 2 dynamite receivers. They have 2 good tight ends. They have Mike Davis, who's a solid running back. I think they're going to be running the ball a lot. In that division too, you got the Panthers, the Saints, you got the Bucks. I think that a lot of potent offensive players in that division. I think the Saints might have taken a step back, but for the most part, the explosiveness of the Panthers has gone up because of Sam Darnold. And then the Buccaneers are obviously the Buccaneers. They've got an incredibly explosive offense. So I think that what the Falcons might want to do is like, listen, we might not be able to win the games like we want to in terms of just putting up a zillion yards. Let's run the ball. Let's establish the clock. We have a couple of good tight ends and wide receivers that we can use. But, we'll see. We'll see what Arthur Smith wants to do with this team. All right, now talking about the possible future moves. So I recently did my top 5 list of the top 5 2022 NFL draft quarterbacks that were available. You look at them, I mean, the Falcons have, that's the question. When you really think about that, you're like, well, Matt Ryan's not that bad. He's not that bad. Matt Ryan's not the problem. But you and I both know that Matt Ryan probably doesn't eat green tea ice cream like Tom Brady does. His seasons are probably limited, so they've got to ultimately find somebody who's going to take over for him. That doesn't have to necessarily be in the draft. I do know that you have to remember, Ryan Tannehill was considered a bust. Ryan Tannehill went over to Arthur Smith. Arthur Smith was only the offensive coordinator for the Tennessee Titans for 2019 and 2020. Took over a couple games in. They had that horrible game against Denver. He gets out. Tannehill goes in, and they go on a run. And you're like, oh, okay, well, that was an aberration. That's not going to happen in 2020. Well, guess who goes on another run again? So you're seeing that, he's really, really playing well with Arthur Smith as a quarterback. I mean, Ryan Tannehill is playing well with Arthur Smith as his offensive coordinator. So we're able to see, as long as Arthur Smith calls the plays, sometimes head coaches, when they take over, they can, I'm not going to call plays. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. Kind of step back in the fold. I hope that he doesn't do that. I hope that he actually still calls the plays and still does it that way, because he does such a good job with that. But you have to remember now. So if you're rebuilding the Falcons, so we are pretty decent at offensive line. We're good at receiver. We got some solid tight ends. Okay, quarterback's a little bit old. Running back is not necessarily a guy who's young and spry. Defense needs as much help as you can get. Okay, there's some talent there, but they need to be put in the right direction to succeed. So I think that what they need to do is at some point within Arthur Smith's first 2 years, Matt Ryan is probably going to be dealt in some way, or at least before the 3rd season, I think that he will be gone. Now, I know some people might be worried about that, but I'm really thinking about Arthur Smith. I'm like, okay, do you just squeeze as much out of Matt Ryan as you can get as possible, or are you like, listen, we got rid of Julio, let's revamp this team. Once Matt Ryan leaves, this team is completely different. I mean, after that, it's, I don't know, maybe Deion Jones. That's the remaining, or the most tenured guy on the team. That needs to be at least addressed at some point. Julio was already taken care of. Julio wanted out. Julio's out. But Matt Ryan's, the age is coming for him. He can still play. He actually can play pretty well. But I do want to make sure that, the Falcons understand that we can't expect him to do this for the next 10 years. Not everybody's Tom Brady. All right, so that's my breakdown of the Atlanta Falcons. I hope that they see the path going forward, okay? I do think that Matt Ryan's days are numbered. Now, I mean, you never know. I mean, he might be eating green tea ice cream. He might be doing his thing. But more than likely, he's not. He's going to age like most quarterbacks. Arthur Smith has shown an ability to revamp quarterbacks, so you never know who becomes available. He already had Marcus Mariota before. Mitchell Trubisky is a backup right now. Jameis Winston is a player right now. There's Teddy Bridgewater. They might get the Denver Broncos might get a Drew Lock. You don't know. So there's a lot of talent that's out there. We'll see if he can actually draw that same ability out of that talent like he did with Ryan Tannehill. All right, everybody, thank you so much. Please like, share, subscribe to the channel. If you have any questions, please let me know. I appreciate all of the interactions. So please, everybody let me know. But beyond that, everybody have a good Monday. We will be doing the NFC North next week for the preview. I'll see you guys there.